Great to have you here. Great to have you on board. I'm here with David Meerman Scott, the #1 ever when it comes to real-time marketing, content marketing, everything, web marketing, advocacy, and super best-selling author of the New Rules of Marketing and PR. Fanocracy, Newsjacking, everything, web marketing, and of course, music and surf lover, entrepreneur, consultant, super keynote speaker. So thank you for being with us, David. It's been it is an absolute pleasure.
Oh, hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed all of the pre-event things that you put out on social media. I really appreciate that.
Thanks to you, David. It's an absolute pleasure. It's a great privilege. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. And of course, I'm a big fan of your works on everything you have done in terms of books and everything related to knowledge sharing. And I've been a great evangelist. I've been adopting also this book for a course I've been managing for a business.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate
and
that.
Clearly using all the quotes, all the knowledge you've been sharing within the books when it comes to presentation, training session, designing strategies. I still remember when I read the first book was Real-Time Marketing NPR.
Okay.
And I was in London and I said to myself, who the hell is this guy? I checked and I investigated a little bit about you, and I got that we got lots of things in common: economic background, experience in financial work, passion for real-time communications, also books, and of course the name. And I said to myself, I need to connect with him. It's a meaningful connection, connection.
Absolutely. So thank you for connecting. Thank you for reading the books. It's a really interesting time we're living in right now with the pandemic and what that means for all of us. And in my country, all of the strange activities that have gone on in the last week or so. So it's really great to be here. We can forget about all that other stuff going on and just focus on having some fun.
Yeah. A little bit of fun, a little bit of positivity. So together with you, David, we're going to get more about your new idea of marketing called Fanocracy, which is also behind this book that you have been co-authored with Rachel Scott, which is your daughter, and with the foreword of the Tony Robbins great life strategies and business strategies. So we're gonna get more about how to build a massive fan base and turn customers into fans, and vice versa, fans into customers, as well as a little bit of takeaways, a little bit of insights and perspectives on content marketing, marketing 2021, and advocacy in the light of COVID-19 pandemic. So before getting started, David, I'd like to share a little bit of the ways to get in touch with us during this Q&A to our listeners.
Yeah, please.
So hashtag Books and Friends, join the conversation, share your thoughts, questions, comments, everything you want about content marketing, advocacy, Fanocracy, and marketing 2021. We are live on Zoom, YouTube, also on LinkedIn, so we can get it started. I'd like to start with this, David. I'd like to ask you this. Today's web is different from the web of 10 to 15 years ago. So what has changed? So how has the web evolved, the social web evolved? Because we notice that something has really changed, that we need to get a little bit of context about this new ecosystem, this new world that is continuously changing.
Yeah, great question. So first of all, what hasn't changed is that reaching people on the web is just a fabulous way, especially during a pandemic when you can't meet people in person. I haven't gotten on an airplane in 10 months now. And I very rarely go out and see people. So that's true of many businesses. So the web allows us to reach people all over the world like we're doing right now. So that's fabulous. I have seen a really big change just in the last couple of years. And it's kind of a bad development, I think. And here's what I'm seeing. I've noticed that especially Facebook has dug too far into their AI-driven algorithms.
Oh, yeah.
And those algorithms have become too overpowering, I believe, especially within Facebook, although the algorithms are also very powerful on other social networks, like Instagram, of course, owned by Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, others. And I think that we as marketers, as content marketers, as people who are engaged in social media, have to understand the destructive nature, I believe, of these AI algorithms, especially the one that is being used by Facebook. Because the reason that Facebook algorithm is tuned, it's tuned to want to get us to stay on Facebook. And as a result, what it does is it puts you into buckets of people and forces content on you in such a way that you start to click through and click through and click through. And sooner or later, you're just in a very narrow niche of content. Oh, yeah. You're not seeing things from lots and lots of people. And I believe that that was one of the biggest reasons for what's going on in my country with the polarization of the different political ideas, because people only see the things that they agree in. And so I think this is pretty dangerous.
So echo chambers.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I think all of us, all marketers, need to very much dig in and understand what the ramifications of this AI-driven algorithm, especially by Facebook, but by the other social networks as well, means for your business. Look at the ethics of it. This is my personal opinion. I'm not suggesting everyone else needs to think this way, but I believe that the Facebook AI algorithm is among the top 5 most destructive things ever invented by human beings in history. Wow. I believe it's that bad. Wow. And I think that you don't have to share that opinion, but I think you have to do the research to understand how it works and what that means for your business. Does that mean you continually want to advertise on Facebook? Does that mean you want to continually post content to Facebook? Yeah. And I think that that's a really important issue for all marketers to understand.
Yeah, very fascinating stuff. Very fascinating stuff, David. David, the web has evolved a lot, and behind, I read your book, Fanocracy, and your idea is that this connection that we're going to get in the when it comes to the today's web, a little bit superficial in respect to the past, because at the very beginning, where it was very interesting join the web, because that was the possibility to connect with family, with parents, acquaintances, and it was very funny because it was a way to stay updated about all the things related to our peers and circle of friends and all this stuff and so forth. Now, today, the things have changed, and this is the thing that I got by reading your book. So why do we need to change a little bit our mind about this way of connecting, through social networks and all these things, social webs?
So I think it actually goes back to your first question, and that is that because of these algorithms, because of the ways that especially Facebook, but the other ones treat you, the people you're connected with are not necessarily seeing the content that you put out. Because, and we've all seen this, you put out a piece of content on a social network and nobody sees it. There's no comments. That's simply because the social network's not showing it to people. So I think that this needs to be kind of put aside. And then we need to think about how we humans have done a good job at connecting. So in my opinion, the reason that I started to think deeply about this is because I started to think about my own life. And in my own life, I started to spend less and less time on social networks. and more time with the things that I love in my life and the things I'm a fan of. I'm a huge fan of live music. I'm a huge fan of surfing. I'm going to just go over here. I didn't expect to do this, but here's a surfboard sitting in my office that I have. So I'll stand with my surfboard here for a second. I'm such a fan of surfing. I have a surfboard. I actually made this surfboard in my office. And I'm a huge fan of live music. I'm a huge fan of a lot of things. And so this idea of understanding what you're a fan of, it becomes really, really interesting. And it's actually rooted in neuroscience. And it's rooted in I have to put my surfboard down. It's rooted in neuroscience. It's hardwired in our brains. That we are safe and comfortable when we're with a tribe of like-minded people. So for me, I love live music. I've been to 804 live music concerts in my life. I love especially a band called the Grateful Dead. I've seen them 75 times. I love to surf. And so when I'm surfing and I'm with people who are also surfing, those are people who are part of my tribe. I can connect with them. Even if I've never met them, we have something in common. When I'm at a Grateful Dead concert, same thing, I can connect with them, even if I've never met them, because we have something in common. We're both fans of the same thing. And I was talking to my daughter, Reiko, about this 5 or 6 years ago, and she started talking about how much of a fan she is of Harry Potter. And she's read all the books, seen all the movies. She even wrote an alternative ending to the Harry Potter series and posted a 85,000 word book and posted it on a fan fiction site. And in the book, Draco Malfoy is a spy for the Order of the Phoenix. And so we figured we're huge fans of the things we love. And we decided to dig in and do the research around it. And that eventually became the book that you talked about. You held up your copy. I'm going to hold up my copy. This is Fanocracy, turning fans into customers and customers into fans. And so what we learned is that any business can grow fans. Anybody can grow fans. And a lot of it is based on neuroscience, because going back to this idea of fans, in our ancient history as humans, 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, the idea of being a part of your tribe was really important, because when you're with your tribe, you're safe and comfortable. Exactly. But if you're not with your tribe, you're vulnerable. And the same thing is true in our brains today. When I'm surfing or when I'm at a live music show, I'm safe and comfortable. But if I'm in an unfamiliar city, I feel uncomfortable. If I'm with people I don't know, I feel uncomfortable. So as marketers, what we can do is we can give thought to how can we, or business owners or entrepreneurs or any of us in our career can give thought to, how can we build a tribe of people? How can we bring people together? How can we create a group of people, because that will build fans?
That's very interesting, very fascinating stuff. And I realized that Fanocracy, in a different way of creating a sort of, for years and years in the PR world, they've been saying that we needed to create a movement, right? Fanocracy is a positive stuff, as a positive thing. When it comes to movement, is more or less negative, because they are based on frustration, on the things that politicians are not able to address. And this is the point of the matter, especially for companies and big brands, because they got to create something positive and non-negative. This is my point of view about, and I would like to ask you this, David. We got a question from Antonio Susta, and he said, and you were starting saying telling a little bit about that. So, raving fans are normally associated to cool products, smartphone, TV, food, bars, and cars, just to name a few. Can B2B companies, B2B, dealing with boring products, apply your ideas and strategies when it comes to Fanocracy?
Absolutely, Antonio, no question about it. Because when we did our research for this book, we found examples of people who have built fans in all kinds of businesses, in B2B companies, in nonprofit organizations, government agencies, big companies, small companies, all different types of companies. And for example, one product category that so many people hate is automobile insurance, car insurance. And so we found an example of a company, they're called Hagerty Insurance, and they're both B2B and B2C. So B2C is you can buy your car insurance directly from this company called Hagerty, or the B2B side is they sell through agents, and you can buy your auto insurance through an agent. Now they specialize in classic car auto insurance. And so I spoke with the owner, the entrepreneurial owner of Hagerty Insurance. His name is McKeel Hagerty. And he told me about his business. He said, David, every other auto insurance company sells either based on spending more money on advertising or by being the lower cost provider. And so he said, I'm not going to do that. I want to build fans. Now, Hagerty does classic car auto insurance. So insurance for those wonderful old Porsches and Ferraris and so on. And so what they specifically said was, let's look at ways that build fans. So they go to classic car shows and over hundreds a year, and they meet with people who are fans of classic cars. They have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. They have Hagerty's Drivers Club, which is their online club with 650,000 members. They have a database of the valuations of classic cars. And their B2B customers, the insurance agents, love this stuff. And they've grown they grow their business by 20% every year. They are the largest classic car auto insurance company in the world. And I'll give you two more examples. We can go into detail if you want, but two more examples that are in the book. One of them is Microsoft. Now, Microsoft is an interesting example because they've been around now for a very long time. I think maybe like 35, 40 years, a long time. They're no longer the young, smart company. Many people consider them an older company. And just in the last few years, they've actually focused on this idea of fandom in their B2B part of their business, their partner community. And so I've been lucky to speak at the Microsoft Worldwide Partner Conference 6 or 7 times. And what's so interesting to me is that the partner community is this massive fandom of people who love Microsoft, because Microsoft products and services are the thing that's allowing their company to grow. And the partner conference every year, there's 25,000 people who come. The online partner community has over 1 million people on it. And those people love to interact with other members of the partner community. And Microsoft actually, they lurk in the partner community, but they don't run it. They don't answer the questions. Other partners do. So I think Microsoft is a great example. And another example we can spend more time digging into, but is HubSpot, another B2B. It's a B2B software company. Growing like crazy. I joined their advisory board back in 2007 when they had 0 customers. Now they're this year, 2020, they're going to announce their earnings in about a month's time, and they're expected to do $650 million in revenue from a standing start of 0 back in 2007. And a large part of what they've done is build fans of the idea of inbound marketing and the idea of HubSpot. So absolutely B2B, no question.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And clearly, David, there are many, many examples and case histories within your book. And if I have to name a few, for example, McKinsey, when it comes to alumni, then I also read and I found very interesting the one of Hillary Clinton. And clearly, what's the most important ingredient or the most important ones to create a Fanocracy, so a massive fan base?
Well, let's look at one thing that we can all do right now because of the pandemic, and be a really great way to build fans, because we're in a situation right now that's a little bit different than normal. When the book was published in January of 2020, exactly a year ago, as we're doing this discussion. And so as we were writing it and finishing the writing and so on, the pandemic had not happened. So one of the things that we talked about is the idea of physical proximity. In other words, how far are you away from your existing and potential customers? And can you get closer to them physically? Now, we're in a pandemic, so this no longer applies for the moment. But we looked at the neuroscience behind this idea of building fans. What's going on in our brains? And I mentioned earlier that this whole idea of fandom is absolutely rooted in neuroscience, because we want to be part of a tribe of like-minded people. However, one neuroscience scientist, his name is Edward T. Hall, identified different levels of proximity, or how close one person is to another person. And what he identified is that further than 12 feet, further than about 4 meters, that's what he called public space. And in public space, further than 12 feet, people know that somebody is in that space further than 12 feet away from you, but our brains don't actively track those people. However, when somebody gets within 12 feet of us, our brain kicks in and begins tracking those people, because that's a survival technique that's hardwired in our brain. And then inside of 4 feet, sort of arm's length is where the most powerful connections happen. That's why at a cocktail party or some kind of gathering, people generally are about 4 feet apart from each other, because that's the personal distance. And so if you're with your tribe, you're with people you know, and you're 4 feet away, that's extremely powerful. If you're with people you don't know, in a crowded elevator or lift, for example, then can be a negative emotion. So this is difficult to do during a pandemic. This idea of bringing people together. But
we can leverage social media for it.
But there's another aspect of neuroscience that I wanted to lead up to that explains how we can engage with people right now, even during a pandemic. And that other form of neuroscience is called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are the part of our brains that fire when we see somebody doing something as if we're doing it ourselves. So I'd like to demonstrate for you. And I've got a lemon. I've got a slice of lemon here. So if I take a bite of this slice of lemon, it's really powerful to bite a slice of lemon, right? Because my eyes are closing, my eyes are watering a little bit, my mouth puckers up a little bit, and I can feel it on my lips, I can feel it on my tongue. My brain is firing. Your brain is firing too, right? Yeah, it's crazy.
I close my eyes immediately.
And everybody who's watching, your brains are firing too. And the reason is because your mirror neurons are kicking.
Yeah.
So here's where this is really interesting for building fans. You remember I talked about just a moment ago, this idea of being 4 feet away from someone is where the most powerful human relationships happen. Because of mirror neurons, video can make people feel as if they're 4 feet away. So right now, you and I are 3,000 or 4,000 miles away from each other. I'm outside of Boston. Where are you right now?
In this precise moment, I'm in Italy.
You're right. So you're in Italy. We're 4,000 miles away from one another. But because of mirror neurons, I feel like I'm in the same room as you. I know I'm not in the same room as you, but I feel like I am in the same room as you. And everybody who's watching us feels like we're in the same room because of mirror neurons. So what does that mean for video? What it means is that if you crop your video, sort of like I'm doing now and like you're doing now as well, it makes it feel as if we're about, it makes it feel as if we're about 4 feet away. My camera is actually closer, but it feels like we're 4 feet away. I'm looking directly at most of the time, I'm looking directly at the camera. The camera is the same level as my eyes. I'm doing it in a natural way. So as if I'm talking to you. And this is a super powerful way to build fans of a business, to use video on social networks, to use video on your website, to use video in lots of different ways, because you're growing fans because of these 2 different concepts of physical proximity and mirror neurons that are kicking in.
Very fast. It's digital physical proximity.
Exactly.
We can call that.
And it totally works. And here's some, here's some proof of that. If you ever do an experiment on a social network, like let's say LinkedIn, for example, and you post a piece of text, and then post something that's very similar, but in the form of a video, like we're doing now, looking at the camera and talking, the video will always get more views and always get more comments, always, because people react to video.
Totally agree with you, and I'm very, very fascinated by the stuff. I'd like to ask you, David, what are the key steps? Because your book is a 9 steps guide to build a Fanocracy. But what are the most complicated ones in which we have to put all kind of efforts and put all kind of energy to make sure that we bring it to life properly and effectively?
So there are 9 different ideas in the book for building fans. And I don't think there's any organization that does all 9. So the way that we built it was you don't have to do all of them. But you can read through the book and find some of the ones that become interesting. I just shared one. So the idea of getting close to people physically, and then during a pandemic, we can't do that. So virtually get close to people. One of the ones I really enjoy is the idea of giving gifts. Giving gifts. So it's really a cool way to build fans, to give gifts to the universe without any expectation of anything in return.
Thanks for joining us.
Right? Exactly. That's what you're doing right now, aren't you? You're providing a gift to the universe with this live stream, aren't you? Exactly right. And this is the key. The key is that you're doing it in such a way that you don't expect people to give you something in return. It'd be nice if they were to learn more about you, or buy a book, or learn more about a company, or whatever it might be. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is to provide that gift. And lots of different examples of how this works. But I look at my own world. I started my business 19 years ago. I've never once made a sales call. It's all about creating content, putting it out there, and then people find me. And so, there's lots of different examples of this, but I want to share one example that was an example in the book, and that's a battery company called Duracell. So Duracell
Duracell, yeah.
Yeah, they've given away millions and millions of batteries.
Yeah.
And the reason is because Duracell has a program they call Power Forward.
Yeah.
And what Power Forward does is they give away free batteries to people who are in need. Traditionally, that's been victims of natural disasters, fires, hurricanes, floods, and so on. But since the pandemic started, they've given away over 10 million batteries in the United States to hospitals and first responders like firemen and policemen. Wow. And they give away the batteries for free. And the reason they do that is because they recognize if we provide people with these batteries now, when they need them desperately, they will remember us in the future for when it's time to buy batteries. And that actually absolutely works. And so this
great social impact, great social positive.
Right. Exactly right. Now, going back to, I believe his name was Antonio, but the
Antonio we got another question from Antonio.
Let me just go back to his question around B2B and giving gifts. Yeah. So one way to give gifts is to provide free content. Yeah. But I've noticed that many B2B companies don't give it away for free. Yeah. What they do is they require that you have to fill out a form. So they create a paper or some kind of interesting information. They say, here's our information. It's totally free. It's not free. It's not free if you have to give an email address to get it. Yeah. And so my recommendation to B2B companies is to provide it with no requirement that you have to give your email address to get that paper or that document.
Okay, we got this question from another question from Antonio. It's very delicate and complicated. So Fanocracy is all about creating a culture that puts customer as a top priority. The magic of transforming customers in raving fans happened for Amazon and Apple, but in my opinion, did not happen for Microsoft or Google. Just an example, his opinion. If you were the CEO of these two companies, what would you do as a top priority?
Well, as I told you,
I
think Microsoft is doing a good job. Yeah. And I actually made them one of the stories in the book. And as I mentioned earlier, specifically around how they do their partner program. Yeah. So they've done a very, very good job at building fans of their partner program. Regarding Google, I agree that that they probably haven't built that many fans, and I think what I would do specifically if I was Google right now is I would be very, and it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. I would be very concerned about the AI algorithm that drives YouTube, especially that drives YouTube, that drives the search engine too. Because the way that those AI algorithms are driven, that drive their search engine and especially that drives YouTube, it's too easy to get into a situation where you're only seeing the ideas that you agree with. And that can become very, very dangerous in the world we live in. I would like to see Google be much more transparent and much more honest about what's going on, and maybe be willing to forego some of their revenue to dial back a little bit on that AI algorithm and how it works.
Cool. We got another question. Getting back to the world of content marketing, we can link to this. I'm curious. This question is from Lisa Monaski, Senior Manager of Deloitte US Communication. I think he is an expert about real-time communication. I'm curious about the very different platform, all the different platforms companies need to pick and choose. Can support them all with good content without massive budget?
Yeah, so interesting question here. I think that that it's better to focus on some of the social networks and some of the content types than it is to try to do everything. So let me explain a little bit of what I mean by that. There's hundreds, there's thousands of social networks out there.
Yeah.
You know, besides the ones that we can all name, you know, Snapchat and TikTok and Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and you know, I've already named 7 or 8, and there's hundreds or thousands more social networks. You can't possibly be on all of them. And then you think of the types of content. There's video, there's photographs, there's text-based content.
Yeah.
There's infographics. There's other kinds of graphics. And there's all kinds of different types of content. So if you take the number of social networks and multiply them by the types of content, there's an infinite variety of ways that you can do content marketing. So I think it's a mistake to try to do everything. You know, first of all, it's impossible. But even if you were to try to pick and choose 100 different social networks, it's going to be so difficult to do that. So I always suggest that it's way, 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 way better to pick a few.
Yeah.
You know, choose, say, 2 or 3 social networks to focus on. Choose 2 or 3 content types. If you're in a very large business like Deloitte, you know, maybe you can choose a few more. Yeah. And maybe you can have at least a little bit of content in each of the different types of content. So some text-based content in the forms of blogs, for example, in the form of Twitter, which is typically text-based content. You can do some video, you can do some infographics, you can do some photographs and other types of content. A big company like Deloitte could probably do that. But again, I do think it's better to focus than it is to try to do everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you, David. We got also a message from Julia. She says, I've started to read a book. I'm a customer-centric marketer working for the customer-centric company and retail business, Amazon. I'm keen on learning experience and insights from Fanocracy.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I very much appreciate that. And, you know, I think Amazon in general does a pretty good job with it because the ways that Amazon shows people information, I think is super interesting. And I've been a huge customer for a very long time.
Yeah, they deliver.
I'm also a big fan of the fact that I've probably sold a quarter of a million, 250,000 books via Amazon, maybe more, maybe as many as 500,000 books on Amazon. Yeah.
So this is a good stuff for Amazon. So I'd like to ask you this, David. Employees and customers advocacy are going to be, in my opinion, but there are also lots of facts and stats that prove that, are going to be very key when it comes to creating trust, building trust for brands, organizations, initiatives, individuals, how to effectively involve them in the Fanocracy building process. Because for many years, companies have tried to do that, but everything was sounding a little bit fake or not so authentic.
Yeah. That's a great question. So we did a bunch of research on this as we were writing the book, and it turns out what we learned is that the companies that are the most successful at getting their employees to be, if you will, fandom ambassadors, for lack of a way to describe it, are the ones who treat their employees in the same way that they think about their customers. In other words, they look at their employees and think about how can we build fandom within our employees. And so many of the things that we've talked about here, how can they apply those same ideas when working with their employees? In other words, think of their employees as an incredibly important group of people to build fans around. And my favorite example of that is HubSpot. And I'm able to talk about HubSpot because, as I mentioned, I've been on the advisory board since 2007. I know them intimately. And Brian Halligan is the CEO. He's a friend of mine. And Katie Burke is the chief people officer. I know her as well. They just do a really, really good job. So here's a couple of things that they do at HubSpot. The first thing is they're incredibly transparent. Yeah. They provide all kinds of detail about how the company is run, how decisions are made. And anybody who wants to can comment on those things as part of their wiki. So they do a great job there. They don't try to make rules for how employees behave. For example, they don't have a vacation policy, a holiday policy. Instead, you just take holiday time whenever you want it. They don't have a fixed number of holidays. And so these are the kinds of things that mean that people love to work at HubSpot. Yeah. So for 2020, they were named the #1 best company to work for in the United States by Glassdoor. And they just got the data for 2021. They were named #4, and that's by their employees. Their employees rate the company, and they were #1 last year, #4 this year. So they're doing a great job. And then that translates, because their employees are so happy to work at HubSpot, that translates to how the employees deal with the customers and builds fans of customers.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a nice, very nice case history within your book where it is this, the Caio and Gaio restaurant in Rome. I'd like to get what happened that night.
It was interesting because I was in Rome to speak at a conference, and I was just wandering around looking for a restaurant, and I don't know, how do I say it properly? That neighborhood, Trastevere, something like that, the neighborhood I was in. And so I was wandering around and I found this restaurant, and they were, the employees there were just super interesting. They were having fun, they were smiling, they were dancing, they were treating me well. And I thought, you know what? The food is good, but I've had better food. The location was good. I've been in better locations. But I love this place because I love the people who work here.
The energy, the positivity, right?
Yeah.
So, and that is Fanocracy, positivity, in my opinion.
Absolutely right.
And I can also share some quotes you have been reading in your books that I still remember when it comes to involving the employees and building a Fanocracy by involving them through them. I remember this quote: "To engage your marketplace right now, free your people to communicate in real time." First, this is very important today when it comes to content marketing. So, and another one, there was another one that I liked a lot that I've been using times after times. So having other people telling your story drives action.
Oh yeah, totally right. You can tell your own story as many times as you want, but when somebody else is telling your story, then it becomes powerful. You know, the ways that I've been telling stories today for the time we've been here together, telling stories about Microsoft and Hagerty Insurance and Duracell batteries and the other companies, you know, that's way more powerful than if those people that worked at those companies were telling those stories.
Cool. We got other 2 questions, David. So these questions come from Ilaria Lozzi, social media marketing manager at Inter Milan Football Club. So we are in the world of sports fans.
Nice.
David, what are the key strategies to be implemented during this period of pandemic? This is very complicated, right?
It's a tough question, but I've shared a couple of thoughts already. But first of all, video is great. We talked about that. But I would recognize that we will emerge from this hopefully soon. Hopefully by the middle of this year, we will emerge. And people will remember those companies that treated them well during the pandemic.
Yeah.
People will remember the companies that were helpful, the companies that were being a super important part of the community. And so just to give you a few examples that I've run across recently, there's restaurants are having a terrible time.
Yeah.
But there's restaurants I've seen that have been providing meals for free to people who work at hospitals, because the people who work at hospitals are working so hard.
Yeah.
Back to HubSpot, because I love the example of it. What happened with HubSpot was they were seeing some people in certain industries, restaurants is another example of this, that were having very difficult financial trouble, and they wanted to cancel their subscriptions. And HubSpot wanted to figure out ways that they could work together with their clients so that they didn't have to cancel. So these are the things that when we get out of the pandemic and these businesses start to thrive again, the organizations that have been helpful to people will do really well, I believe, because people remember who treated them well during tough times, and they'll reward that during the good times.
Okay, cool. Very, very fascinating stuff. Ilaria, again, so kind of future trends did you see in the social media marketing when it comes to social media marketing?
Future trends, I think we're kind of, in many ways, getting back to the old days of content marketing. Partly because of what we talked about already a few times around the terrible algorithms, but I believe that one of the most powerful things that we can do with content marketing is focus on our own website, our own blog. The content that we own. I think that there was a period of years, 5 to 10 years, where content marketing shifted. In the beginning, when I first started talking about content marketing was 20 years ago. Oh my God, 20 years ago. It's unbelievable to me that it was 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, the only option we really had was our website.
Yeah.
You could have the website, you could have a blog, but YouTube and Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, none of those services existed yet. So everyone was building out websites, building out their blog, creating the content with the real estate they own, the URL that they own, whatever it is, www.mycompany.com. Then, starting around 2006, 2007, the social networks started to kick in, Facebook and YouTube, and because I use YouTube count them as a social network, Twitter and so on, all began around the same period of time. And content marketing focused very heavily on social networks. I think right now, many organizations have not focused as much on their websites, on their blogs, on the content they own, because they've focused too much on the social networks. So I think for the future, we're going to come back to this idea of your own content. The thing that you own is super powerful and should be focused on.
Yeah, and you've always been saying content-rich website first.
Yeah.
And think and act like a thought leader and a journalist. So we remember this for forever. So probably I'm gonna ask you the last question, David, when it comes to the question that for the Q&A. Events world. So speaking of events world, what's your assessment of that in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic? So you've been telling us, okay, we need to go online with these videos, but how about making these events, doing these events in a very effective way?
Yeah, so I have not done an in-person event since March. You know, all over the world, events have been canceled. So you're holding up my newest book, Standout Virtual Events. What I did was I decided to write a book on virtual events. And the basic idea of Standout Virtual Events is that what we know, you know, David, we've been talking about this for a long time. Whenever a business moves from offline to online, in the beginning, it fails because people try to do what they did in offline world. So think about newspapers. Yeah. When newspapers first went online, they were failures because they just tried to recreate a newspaper in an online world. Yeah. In the beginning of the web, advertising agencies simply tried to do advertising on the web, and that was a failure. What really works is content marketing. And the same thing started to happen with virtual events in the last year because of the pandemic. People said, oh, my in-person event is canceled. I'll do a virtual event instead. And what they initially tried to do was recreate their in-person event and just put it on a virtual way. But that didn't work because an in-person event is a theatrical experience, while a virtual event is a cinematic experience. So the ones that were successful were the organizations that understood you have to reimagine and reinvent what's possible in a virtual event. And instead, think of it like a television program with quick cuts, small segments, change it up, have different elements, make it shorter. Make all of the different sessions shorter. And this is going to be way more effective than just trying to televise keynote speeches.
Cool. Fantastic. We are more or less at the end of the road, end of this journey, the end of this episode of the Books and Friends TV. It's very Italian way, so shaking hands, having fun. So it's been a fantastic journey, David, fantastic Q&A. I do want to thank you for your time, for your availability, for being with us and joining us, and for helping us getting more about this new idea of marketing called Fanocracy. Again, published by Penguin House, forward by Tony Robbins. How to turn customers into fans and fans into customers is available on Amazon, or if you want, how to reach you, David. So if someone wants to collaborate with you, wants to get in touch with you, how do they reach you?
So first of all, we've got a website at www.fanocracy.com if you want to learn more about that book. And you could reach me if you just Google my name, David Meerman Scott. You'll find me. I'm the only David Meerman Scott in the world. On most of the social networks, like Twitter, for example, I am DM Scott. That's DMSCOTT. So any of those ways will be great to reach me.
Cool. I want to greet and thank also all our listeners and followers. Thanks for watching. Thanks for following us. If you want to subscribe our channel, if you really appreciate and enjoy this episode of the Books and Friends TV, clearly we'll be back soon with another super Q&A and with another super special guest author. But it's gonna be hard to have person like of the same level of David, because he's the number one, the one and only. And I thank you again for this. So thank you very much all for watching us, for following us, and I'll see you soon. Bye from Books and Friends. It's been an absolute pleasure. David Meerman Scott.
Thanks, everybody.
Educated and informed instead of interrupting and selling. Cheers. Bye. Catch you soon. David, bye.